Thank you, Dr. Radwan Masmoudi. Thank you to CSID for these opportunities that they provide us to communicate with your guests. Thank you, everyone. Of course, it is well known that with the 25th of July, 2021, what happened in Tunisia is a coup against the constitution, against legitimate institutions undertaken by the president of the republic through an illegitimate interpretation of the constitution. The result is the destruction of institutions, the destruction of legitimacy, and all that could make of Tunisia a state that is able to fulfill the needs of its citizens. The coup has gone through a number of stages. It has used force to impose itself and imposed a roadmap which it expected to succeed, and expected that when the roadmap is imposed, he would be able to convince the world and Tunisians that what he had undertaken was a correction of the path of the democratic transition. And of course, we knew from the beginning, especially the voices that said from the beginning that what happened was a coup and that what happened is outside legitimacy. However, what has surprised everyone is that each step of this path, the Tunisian people sent a message to the coup, to President Said, that is, that it has lost all hope and no longer believes the narrative presented to the Tunisian people on the day of the coup. The roadmap he adopted was based on a referendum on the constitution, on a constitution he had written himself. So Tunisia, 11 years after the revolution and democracy and the democratic transition, we have one individual abrogating the constitution adopted by the majority and imposing his own constitution. The Tunisian people opposed him, but the turnout was very low, and this was the first message and the first failure. The second step was the first round of elections, which we, as the Tunisian opposition, we consider to be a slap in the face of the coup, because the turnout was a mere 8%, which was officially announced, but those who followed and observed the elections know that it was in fact much lower than that. And this was another opportunity for the Tunisian people to send a message that they no longer have the same trust which the president was under the illusion that he had obtained on the 25th of July, 2021. Now, the solution, we say, yes, we have said repeatedly that what he did was a destruction of what we had built over 11 years. And although that period was not all a complete success, nevertheless, we had built many democratic institutions and we were required to reform them and preserve them. How can we restore democracy? What do Tunisians have to do in order to return democracy to its correct path? Today, surely the roadmap in Tunisia, there is a difference among views within Tunisia, which is not far from the positions announced after the 25th of July. There are positions of principle, those who came out to say, yes, perhaps democracy was not in an ideal state, but what happened was a coup and is against the constitution. And there are others, of course, who found in what took place perhaps an opportunity to position themselves or an opportunity to get rid of a political rival. What we see today is we still see the same parties, even if they have developed their positions. Some of them have remained on the same positions, with one important change, that is the expansion of the base around which are gathered those who want to go back to democracy, and a restriction with time, reduction of the voices calling for the support of this coup, or those who consider it an opportunity to go forward towards a new third republic or new political situation. There is evolution, the resistance against the coup, even if there isn't a united opposition, even if there is no, there are no voices that are now opposing the coup, even if they are not together in one uniting structure. What is important and what makes us optimistic about the opposition is that these oppositions, despite their differences, they are united in saying that this is a coup, and that Tunisia, and maintaining Tunisia outside legitimacy and outside constitutional frameworks, is a danger for Tunisia, and makes Tunisia at risk of violent social uprisings. Regarding the role of the army in protecting democracy, I personally, we have always said that the national army, since the revolution, in this democratic transition, this change in political life in Tunisia has enabled it to achieve a number of privileges. There is trust that has been built between the Tunisian people and the army institution. There is also perhaps a will from everybody to make the security forces to be at the service of the people. However, unfortunately, this coup has instrumentalized these two institutions by, perhaps because the one who undertook the coup is the head, the leader of the military forces, although this does not allow him to order the army to dismiss the government or close the parliament. But I say that the national army, whenever it sees that there is a danger facing social national peace, it will intervene. The national army, when it sees that the Tunisian street, the majority are against the coup, particularly as we believe that things have evolved and changed from a position of principle on the 25th of July to this day, there has been an evolution and development in this stance, which is supported by the fact that Mr. Qais Said used to enjoy electoral constitutional legitimacy, but now what we see, this legitimacy has fallen in light of the fact that he has imposed a constitution, a one-sided constitution that is illegal, in addition to the fact that Mr. Qais Said has lost all his legitimacy through the rejection of the Tunisian people to support him through these legislative elections in its first round. But what is worrying is that the coup authorities are going forward, are in a state of rejection of the reality in Tunisia. There is a very severe social and economic crisis. Tunisia has not achieved an agreement with the IMF, and we all know the very dangerous consequences for the Tunisian economy and the lower social groups in Tunisia. However, unfortunately, the authorities are in denial regarding the opposition parties and organizations. Our hope has been from the first moment, we have said that this fragmentation in the components of the opposition to the coup may be harmful, may prolong the life of this coup, but now there is perhaps rapprochement in the position, and all forces, all parties, we cannot forget that in 2019 there were that recognized institutions deny that the legitimacy has been usurped through this coup, and those parties should have a role. And there has been a rapprochement of views between organizations and parties that oppose the coup, and everyone who knows today that Tunisia cannot continue in this situation of ambiguity and fragmentation. They are all now called upon to find common ground between everyone, where the first objective is to return Tunisia to institutions, not individuals. This is beyond individuals, beyond those voices that say the Tunisian people have rejected the pre-25th of July. And there were those voices who may have welcomed what happened on the 25th of July. Yes, we do not want to go to that same situation as it was, but what we say today is that if there had been an imposed roadmap on Tunisia with the objective of defeating the coup, however, with the content accepting part of the coup and trying to find solutions in other aspects, this is dangerous. And I explained this by saying that there are now initiatives that want to take Tunisia out of the current situation, but by accepting what happened on the 25th of July and reforming what happened after that. For the first time after the revolution, there was the destruction of legitimacy in a way that we all agree was illegal, but those propose accepting the results of the coup. This is dangerous when we have the political elite is now at this crossroads. There are those who say that our democracy has had problems, we should correct them. However, to establish, but for us after the revolution to talk about a force that illegally suspends democracy, and for us to accept that, I see that as more dangerous than the coup, because this will not prevent continuous and successive coups in the future. As for the role of the international community, particularly the US and the European Union, their stances were perhaps, they had their ups and downs. At some points, they were clearer and stronger and more explicit. And at other times, they were not so loud. Tunisia, in its relation with the international community, is only asking for this democratic world to be in harmony with its convictions and principles and coherent with its belief in universal values that we all believe in, all those who believe that democracy and human rights are essential in the relations between nations and peoples. We only ask those nations to be coherent in respect to these values that we agree on and to raise their voices. We have not heard any clear position saying that this is a coup. We ask for greater clarity in stances, because today, in the first round of the elections, the EU was clear in its position by refusing to send observers, and the US, through some of their visits by high-level officials to Tunisia, have also expressed focus on human rights and freedoms in Tunisia. And on the basis, perhaps on the principle of respect of sovereignty, what we apply in relation to these relations is the application of the universal international accords and the decisions of international councils. We have not seen any insistence on the application of the verdict issued by the African court, which is binding according to the treaty signed by the Tunisian state. This verdict has ruled on the need to abrogate all the decisions and measures taken by Qais Said after the coup, but we have not seen any international bodies insisting on the application of this verdict and on the return to legitimacy. Yes, democracy had its problems, and perhaps matters had reached a level of complexity, and there was a need to find a framework for dialogue. But what is certain is that what was needed was not a coup, was not to break the law and contravene the constitution. This is what I wanted to present to all the participants, and I am here ready to answer all your questions.